Hello and welcome. Today's project is all about recognizing the progress when going through the anxiety recovery journey. It's important to recognize the accomplishments that you're undertaking because it gives you a better perspective of where you came from and where you are now. And right now, I still reflect the man I was a year ago or even a week ago. I still reflect on my older self, and that gives me a sense of pride. And it's really important to reflect on that so you know where you are now and where you're going. And so when I was starting my anxiety recovery journey, I wasn't conscious of the progress, but I did feel the feelings of accomplishing stuff because my old self was very chaotic. My old self didn't have a routine, wasn't disciplined, and I was always failing and quitting. That's the thing. I would fail, but then I would quit throughout my whole life. So, this anxiety recovery journey was the moment in my life where I actually committed to something because I attached so much pain to staying where I was. And that drove me forward. That drove me to discipline myself really strictly. And so at the beginning, a lot of anxiety sufferers, they fall back into their old ways. And the reason why is because they're met with that cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is feeling, thinking, and behaving in a manner you're not accustomed to. And so when you go to change and walk down this new path of recovery, what happens is your unconscious mind is saying, hey, this is not what you're used to doing. Let's go back to your old ways. And so where that's why you feel worse than you did before. You have to go from a bad place to a worse place first. And so you go from the bad place of suffering from anxiety, but then you have to adopt this new lifestyle. You have to come to the realization that you're flawed and take on the responsibility of all of your past traumas and highly emotional memories. And that's a big deal. And so a lot of people don't want to go through that pain. And so they go back into their old ways of being. And so you can look at it like a messy room, right? You walk into a room that's just chaos, there's mess everywhere, and you don't know where to start. And so your anxiety response is active because it's chaos. You don't know where to begin. Oh, you have all of the negative thoughts that are associated with the messy room. Oh, what if I don't clean up this room? How it's going to take me years to clean up this mess. And so it's overwhelming, and that's why a lot of people suffering go back to their old ways because they enter the room, there's too much there, and so they go back into their old ways. But the trick is, and the thing to progress is to find a corner of the room and start there. Clean up just a corner. And so that feeling of just cleaning up that desk area, that feeling is that dopaminergic kick, right? Now that dopamine kick is now associated to that feeling of accomplishment. Oh, I cleaned up this little area. At least I did something today. At least I'm further along the path than I was yesterday. And that's really think about that for a minute, because when you step just a little bit and set the bar just low enough, you can attain it. And so once you attain it, you get the dopamine kick, and then that dopamine kick is now associated to that feeling of accomplishing something. And so you're more likely going to accomplish more things the more you get that dopamine kick. And so when I started my recovery, I was a student. I became a student of anxiety. I knew that, okay, my symptoms, these pains and all of these weird sensations that I feel, it's from anxiety. And that was a huge weight off my shoulders. But then I had to learn about anxiety. So I had to stumble forward as a student. And you have to start from square one. Because what I did was I made overcoming anxiety my top priority. I took on the responsibility of my anxiety disorder because I realized no one is going to help me but myself. So what I had to do was take on the responsibility, which it felt good. It felt good to accept that I was suffering and I caused my own suffering, that I have work to do. And so I minimalized everything in my life. And that's what gave me a lot of relief as well when I began my journey. I just started to focus strictly on recovering because I knew that once I change myself, everything else will fall into place. So I had to look internally and become selfish for once in my life because I wasn't selfish. And I was selfish in many ways, other ways, but to overcome and to improve yourself, you have to pick when to be selfish. And that was the time when I was like, okay, I have to be selfish now and overcome this anxiety because other people around me are suffering because of me. Everyone's worried about me. Everyone's concerned about me. Friends, family. I'm causing a lot of negativity. I'm projecting a lot of negativity to the people around me at work, wherever you are. So I had to be selfish and say, you know what? I'm going to focus and focus on my anxiety recovery. And then also that focus led me to just minimalizing my goals of the day. So for instance, I started to discipline myself reading at the bookstore. And so why I did this is because I always had trouble sitting and reading a book. My mind would wander off. I couldn't concentrate. I never finished a book. Well, I have, but I could never get to the end usually of a book. And so I knew that if I was to go to the bookstore and say, Brad, I'm going to sit here for 3 hours and read this book. And so I started to place myself in situations that made me feel uncomfortable. And so once I did that, I realized I started hardening my mind. And when I would get to that 3 hours, I would feel good about myself, like I actually accomplished something. So I had to start this disciplinary act. And once I came home later that day, I reflected back on, you know what, I got through 50 pages of that book today. You don't have to be as extreme as me, but I really had to be extreme with myself because I had to discipline myself because an anxiety sufferer needs structure. They need order because everything has gotten so beyond them. And so what I needed to do was I needed to have some sort of structure. I needed some sort of goal. So every day I was studying about anxiety. I was learning. I was a student now. And you're going to be bad at it when you start out. But the thing about that is you have to stumble forward. You have to just do something different today that you didn't do yesterday. And that's the feeling of accomplishment. That's the meaning. When you take on this responsibility and you start to stumble forward, at least you have a goal in sight. That's good, right? That'll give you the drive. That'll give you some meaning. And so when I took on the responsibility of my anxiety disorder, that gave me meaning. I had meaning. I had something to strive for. And so when I was starting my journey, I felt the progress when at the end of the day, when I came home, I reflected, you know what? I read for 3 hours at the bookstore today. That's freaking good. Like, good for you. Some discipline, right? It felt good. And you know what? Other than reading, I was listening to anxiety recovery podcasts. I was watching anxiety recovery videos. I was learning about the brain. And so if I was to sit and watch Netflix, watching, I don't know, whatever shows are on Netflix, I would feel like I wasted the day. But progress comes, and the feeling of progress comes when you actually do something outside of your comfort zone. And I was doing that every day. I had a hard time concentrating on these anxiety recovery videos. It was difficult, but just doing that made me feel like I'm doing something meaningful. Even though I didn't want to sit there and watch these videos, right? I didn't want to, but I found the meaning and the answers in the videos, and that's what kept me going in my anxiety recovery journey. Now, I hope you have enjoyed this video, and please subscribe to my channel, because on this channel I have everything anxiety recovery related content. And lastly, remember, do not let anxiety define who you are. I will see you on the next video. Bye for now. Remember to hit that subscribe button and that bell so that whenever a new video of mine appears, you will be the first to know. Namaste.